Hello, authors, book lovers, and storytellers, and welcome to another exciting episode of Reader's Magnet featured author interview, where we dive deep into the world of creativity and inspiration. And our guest for today is Kalie Marino, who is a master's degree holder in social work from the University of Iowa, specializing in individual, marriage, family, couples, and group therapy. And with over 30 years, that's 36 years of experience, she has taught various transformational processes nationwide. And her notable research involved collaboration with a master of internal energy, demonstrating the significant physical effects of a person's state of mind. And you know what? Just want to give you a heads up, guys. This groundbreaking work was featured in the national scientific publication, which is the Brain and Mind Bulletin. And because of that background, she has a holistic and spiritual perspective when it comes to these things. So again, without further ado, please help me welcome the author of the book, Breaking Free from the Inner Critic, the Underlying Cause of All Addictions and Social Problems, Miss Kalie Marino. So Miss Kalie, how are we doing today?
Thank you. Doing great. Thanks.
Love to hear that. And again, to all of our viewers, though, and again, if you're tuning in right now, again, basically welcome right now. And also, Kalie, welcome to the Hive. And within this interview, we'll be diving deep more onto your book. So, Miss Kalie, if you can mind, what is your book all about? And can you please show to our audience on what your book looks like? So at least we'll have a good perspective on what this book is. There it is, guys. So yeah, so what is this book all about, Miss Kalie?
Well, I noticed something over the years, as everyone has noticed, how our world is turning very, very critical. Everybody fighting with everybody. If you want a movie, the more negative it is, the more the better. Everybody wants it. Our politicians, instead of saying what they're for, they're talking about what they're against. The world has been turning upside down. And I wanted to know why. What is going on here? And what I discovered was that there is an addiction, literally an addiction to criticism. Because if you want to get noticed, if you want to get some support, be critical. We pay critics lots of money, right?
True. Yeah, I agree with that.
The show is better. You attract more people. It'll be, and politicians have been using it. It's really not good. So I'm going, well, wait a minute, what happened here? And it's interesting to note that people from more simple countries where they don't have a lot of spiritual, like colleges and education and like that, they're not critical. They pretty much look at the world and see how it is. I remember I said one time, I had a lady working for me from South America, and her little boy would come with her. He was precious. And I said to him one day something about, oh, yeah, when your mommy criticizes you. And he looked at me with abject horror. And he said, oh, my mommy would never do that. But we are critical of our children. We have been taught that you got to let them know what's wrong with them so they'll straighten it. And people go to a therapist to find out what's wrong with them. That's terrible. You should be coming to find out what's right with you. We need to know what's right with us so we can function in the world, not what's wrong with us. And this criticism is really, really bad. And so I began looking at it, and I noticed there was these characteristics, and they're in my book, where I had written a paper on what I had noticed. Here's what they have in common with drug addiction.
Okay.
Criticism is habit forming. It's mood altering. It's life-threatening. It can be. You can kill yourself because of it.
Of course. I do agree with that.
Criticism distorts awareness. It leads to destructive behavior. It can. It adversely affects mental and physical health. So the thing is, and the problem is, we all have an inner critic. By the way, have you ever had the thought that there's something wrong with you?
Yeah, I do agree. And that is one thing that, and when you're talking about this, like maybe this book is also for me, because I do have that inner critic within me, and it keeps on telling me about all the negative stuff.
Everybody does. And it's another name for ego in a way.
Could be.
When you're born, there's two of you. There's two of you.
Okay.
One of them is heart-centered. That's you were as just as God created you. Loving, centered self. Look at a baby. Oh my God, all day you can look at it. They're so sweet. They're just loving. That's all they are. They have become critical. And they do this because in the first 5 to 7 years of life, we are in a state of mind of theta energy consciousness. Now, theta consciousness is the consciousness you're in when you're hypnotized or when you're dreaming. So in that state of mind, whatever you see, you believe is true. I remember looking at a picture of myself when I was little with my uncle with his phony Santa mask on. And I'm going, oh my God, I fell for that? Or when you do peekaboo, you really did disappear to the child. It's true because the child sees everything as true. But you know, Hitler, he said, give me your children till they're 7 and they'll be mine for life. The church said the same thing. Because in those first 7 years of life, you program a child. You program them. We program with our values and also with everything we think is wrong with them. So when a child is small, when you tell them they're bad, they believe it. Oh, I'm bad.
Oh.
Yeah. My dad came back from the war when I was 4, and he said I was spoiled rotten, that I had been ruined. I guess I've been ruined. That's what I thought when I started growing up. I've already been ruined, you know? So children believe that. One of the things I want young parents of young children to read this book because it's real important that we're very careful what we say to young children. Very careful. Now, sometimes it can happen also, you know, when they go out on the playground and there's some old meanie, you know, and they get teased, all of that. And it goes right into the programs. And so as we grow up, as we get older, you know, even today, I can still have the thought, oh, Kalie, you're so spoiled. Where does that come from? My dad started it.
Wait,
so,
sorry for interrupting you here, Kalie. But this makes you know what you're trying to say right now. It makes like 100% makes sense though with me, because again, what we are taught as children, we bring up as adults, and the things that we see are right for the other people. They say that they think it's wrong, but upbringing is really crucial when it comes with how you, really crucial with how you think. And yes, going back with what you said, you think that you might be thinking to yourself, hey, I'm being spoiled right now, but it's not that you are being spoiled, but you were taught that the things that you're doing makes you spoiled. You know, this is kind of a bit mind-blowing, but Kalie, continue with what you're saying.
No, it isn't things you're doing. We're programmed to think I'm spoiled. It's get into our identity. See, little children, we take on identity. As children, we identify first and then we do it. Like babies, they say, oh, I can feed myself. They grab the spoon, it goes all over their face, the wall, whatever. But, hey, I'm a feeder. I can do this. If they begin to walk, they say, I'm a walker. They fall down 100 times. It doesn't matter. They're busy being a walker. We don't do that. We wait until we get a degree or a title, and then we say, oh, well, I am a therapist or whatever it is. We have to have the degree or the acclimane to accept it as what we are to begin with. So your identity is very important. In fact, this was my first revelation about criticism. I was married when I was only 18. So we were very young and not really good at relationship. And anyway, one day I noticed that, I was really critical of my husband. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, but I'm critical of myself for the same things. So I thought, wait a minute, I didn't feel good whether I'm critical of him or me. It doesn't feel good. So I decided I'm going cold turkey, no more criticism. Wow, I got to tell you how that went.
Okay.
The harder I tried not to think critical thoughts, the more of them came into my mind. I was panicking because I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get rid of this? My girlfriend came over and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And my girlfriend said, well, Kalie, if you don't want to be critical, what do you want to be? Well, I'd never thought of that. Well, I want to be a loving, accepting person. She said, great, go live your life as a loving, accepting person. say what a loving, accepting person would say, think the thoughts that a loving, accepting person would think, and do the things that a loving, accepting person would do. Start with the identity. So I did, and it made it really easy. And I took on that identity, and it made it so much simpler, because if I'm identified with a loving, critical, a loving, accepting person, it makes it very difficult to criticize.
True.
I mean, writing the book makes it really difficult for me to criticize.
Of course, because again, there are some things that, again, you catch when you're writing the book. There are some times that you might want to think of this, think of that. But Kalie, because again, talking about the book, breaking free from the inner critic, and knowing the concept of the book, and knowing what you went through, is there any way that at least you can tell people, and how can we start, like making sure that we can overcome their inner critic? Because if you're going to be asking me, I do have an inner critic right now, and I might be finding these steps or ways that I would know how I can escape it. Is there anything you could at least give us an advice to how to overcome it?
Let you skip to the steps. I want you to get my book.
Oh,
However,
okay.
I do want to say one thing about how the book got written.
Oh, sure. Continue.
I had written a short article about critical addiction, that because I realized that there was these criticism. It was a short article. And then I took a free class on writing a book. And the guy said, well, you know, all of you want to write the book. But he said, no, just take an article you've written, expand on it. Do that first. So I said, okay. And that's how the book got created.
Started from an article and then got the book out there.
Yeah,
it just expanded from the simple information.
What else do I know? What can I add? How can I help more people? Okay, so what I did come up with was steps. And I don't want to go in, the details are very important. But anyway, the very first step is to be aware of where it's coming from. This is going on in my mind. In other words, the first step is I don't like the way I feel.
Okay.
You know, that's and you know what? These are my thoughts. You have to first get in charge of the fact that you're the one doing it. You're the one that can change it. This is called taking responsibility, is step one. I got the wrong page here open. So the very first step is that. And then, whoops, where's my little list? I like the list better. Anyway, so you have to start with taking responsibility for yourself. Okay. So the very first step is called own it. Own it. I'm doing this. I'm doing this to me. I keep telling myself that I'm not good enough. I keep telling myself I'm guilty. I keep telling myself, etc. That's step one.
Okay.
That's very important. So if I don't like the way I feel, then I need to change it, right?
True. I agree with that.
That the problem is in your mind. Now, that's a whole chapter long, so there's a lot of details of that. And one of the things I suggest in there is for you to name your inner critic.
Oh, I love that.
That inner critic, like for some people, it's got a name of a general, or it's a nun, or it's a priest, or it's somebody that in their mind, maybe it's my father coming back to me saying I'm spoiled rotten or whatever. The inner critic, give it a personality. I had a young man who came to me. He was 22, and his mother brought him in because he was a heroin addict. He'd been through 3 treatment centers. He's still back on heroin.
Oh.
So when he came into my office, I said, wow. I said, heroin must be really seductive. Wow. That's your inner critic, isn't it? Heroin. Oh, boy. You know what? I'm going to want you to create a picture of her for me. And I need a list of when she tells you something, what is useful to you and what isn't. What's destructive? What's the outcome of what she tells you? I want to know. I want a list of it. Well, it took a few sessions, but he finally got it. And he came in one day, he threw it down and he said, there it is. And he said, and I don't ever want to speak to her again. His mother called me 5 years later to say he's been clean ever since.
Love that. And
this is after 3 treatment centers. But you see, today, They do not deal with our identity. I went to his identity. I went to, hey, there's a voice in there. There's a thought in there that's coming into you. You've got to deal with that. Because if you don't, you're just going to go right back. So every time he saw a heroine around heroin, he's listening.
True.
You know what's really interesting is the list he made for me of the results of the heroin. I had it out one day for a man who was an alcoholic, obviously, but he couldn't see that. And then he looked at those lists and he said, oh, that's me. I'm an alcoholic, aren't I?
Wow.
He recognized the pattern that the young man had drawn for his other drug addiction. So it's very interesting. So this first step is not a small step. That's why I recommend reading the book, because there's a lot to that first step. The second step is devalue it. Devalue.
Devalue. Not bringing it up and not making sure that you're not putting it on a pedestal. Putting it down is what I'm understanding from this.
Yeah, that's right. Like if you're addicted to chocolate cake, you need to say, you know what? I don't want that stuff anymore. That's not good for me. I've got to devalue it. I thought it was great, but it isn't. It's a lot of people I see that they drink occasionally, whatever, but then they realize, you know what? That's not good for me. I've just discovered that. So you have to devalue whatever it is that keeps knocking you down. He had to devalue heroin. He had to realize, what is this doing to me? So that's one of the things. Step 2 has to do with devaluing that. And that, again, is not big. And by the way, one of the things is whatever's going on in here, it's usually based on fear.
Okay.
And I want to tell you that fear is not useful. And we've been told that we have healthy fear. No, we don't. We don't have any healthy fear at all. People say, oh, yeah, if we didn't have healthy fear, we wouldn't be wanting to put our hand in the fire. I said, no, we have intelligence for that. I'm not going to put my hand in the fire.
I like that take.
That's not healthy. But
True.
Fear, you know what? We do have guidance. We do have, remember I said there's 2 of us? Well, your real, authentic self from the heart has intelligence and can guide you. This connects to God, whatever you call God or higher consciousness or spirit being. I don't care what you name it, but there is guidance available to us. And whatever comes from guidance feels good. So when you have a feeling that brings about fear, we used to do something, team, we used to spit it out. We said, I don't want that. That's terrible. That's fear-based. I don't want that. It's fear-based. Can't be true. Can't be true because it's fearful. So fear is not useful. That is really an important thing to learn. And then, the third step called flip it.
Okay, flip it.
Flip it.
I'm curious. What does
you're in a train and you're going 100 miles an hour and the tracks are out up ahead.
Okay.
You better flip it fast. You're going off the hill, right?
True.
You've got to take whatever direction you're going with this and you've got to flip it. In other words, you've got to turn your love into something wonderful like forgiveness, like love, to something more higher vibration. What else can I do with this? Okay, he was really nasty to me. Well, what can I do? I think I'll just become his friend instead. I think that would be easier than having him as an enemy. By the way, in this section, there's about 4 different ways. Like there's a lot of different things that can happen to you. There's different reasons for flipping it. And I know of the different reasons, I wrote about each one. And when I got through with that section, my inner guidance said, well, what if the unspeakable happens? Then what are you going to do?
Okay,
back to the drawing board.
Back from scratch then.
So I wrote on a section on what to do when the unspeakable happens. And by the way, what is there? Anyway, a little bit of close last here. You have to name these things, to have them work. Anyway, where is it?
All right, just take your time though, and I do understand when you do have these naming conventions, it's much more easier for you to remember these steps as well.
Right, right.
Mm,
To name them. But I will tell you something interesting about it. The
sure.
day I went to publish my first version of the book,
Mm,
the day I turned it over to the publisher, we got a call at 1 o'clock in the morning that our son had
okay.
been murdered.
Wait, what?
That our son had been murdered.
And how are you then during that time? Like, how did
And
it
the
go for you?
first thing I said for my husband and I
Mm-hmm.
is my training, and I said, everything happens for good. We must find the good. And we did. We made some law changes, a lot of things that
Mm-hmm.
happened in this. I won't go into that.
Okay.
At the end of my book, by the way, there's an after thing where I tell the story of that. But you'll have to read the book for that. But
People need.
anyway, part of it was forgiveness. And I have a big section on forgiveness. I have a whole story in there about a woman who taught me forgiveness.
Hmm.
And her child had been murdered.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, she was my teacher. And when somebody said, well, you should hate the guy that did it, she said, no, I don't. I want to be a loving person. And if I hate him, I'm not going to be myself anymore. And I want to love my daughter, even though she's not in this world anymore. I still want to love her. And I can't love her if I'm hating him.
Mm-hmm.
So
Agree.
it's a beautiful story, by the way. It's a true story. Yeah. It's a true story that happened in my lifetime with she taught me about forgiveness. Really powerful one. So there's all these different layers, and I go in there and I do get into a spiritual section where I really talk about us as spiritual beings because
Mm-hmm.
we have bodies, but we're a spiritual being. We're an energy being. We're made out of energy. You know,
Mm-hmm. Agree. I agree
it's
with
not
that.
spiritual. You can call it. It's not. I'm not saying religious. I'm saying spiritual. But that has many, many avenues. Religion might be one, but
Mm-hmm.
there's many ways to do that. But it's about listening to through your heart, connecting through your heart. And your heart is the best guidance you could ever have. So the first thing I ask myself when I get a thought, does it feel good? Then I believe it. Does it feel negative? Does it feel scary? Then it's not true. I will dismiss it.
Love that. And it's one more thing talking about these thoughts that we have in our minds. Like there are a lot of things that go through us, but having those again, having things that you can remember, and if it again, I think I could apply that with my life. Like if it feels good to me, it's true. But if it's creating fear and it's negative, then just throw it out a window. Just
Right.
don't dwell on the things that are too negative. That's what I'm getting. Correct me if
Well,
I'm wrong here.
toss it. You're right. Devalue. You got it. You got it. Devalue it.
Devalue it. Don't put it on a pedestal.
You got the first two steps.
First two steps there. But again, but those are your first two steps, and I need to read your book when it comes with having all those four steps, trying to make it
Oh,
as
I know
a
what I wanted to tell you.
sure. What is it?
My husband, after the murder, he
Oh,
wanted to go away to a Buddhist retreat center to recover. And
mm-hmm.
I had just finished the book. He hadn't read it yet. So I sent him with a copy of it. And he first day had trouble leaving. The second day he finally left. The third day he called up and he says, I want to come home. I said, honey, look in my book. And in this chapter, there's a section on when the unthinkable happens. Please read it.
Okay,
He read it and he said, I'm okay now.
love that.
Well, I wrote the book for us. There is no one but you. In the end, we do everything we do because of us, from ourselves. What helps you to be a better person, to help you enjoy life more, to be happy. And what's the source of happiness? Being at peace. Being at peace.
I love that, and that is a very wonderful message here, Kaylee. And again, looking at you right now, looking at the book, and looking at all these stories, looking at you, you are a little ray of sunshine having these positive thoughts, and it's something that people can really follow through. And again, up to all of our viewers though, and up to all of the people who's watching right now to the live stream, I just want to give you a heads up though. Try whatever you heard in this interview, try to do those steps. And if you want further guidance, feel free to grab a copy of Kaylee Marino's book. Again, that's Breaking Free from the Inner Critic. It's available through Amazon, but I want just to give you a heads up. Get the revised version, the updated one on Amazon. Feel free to get it. And if you want to get more information about Kalie and want to know and check on updates for her, she does have a website. That's www.openheartinstitute.com. That's spelled and how I say it, but let me spell it out for all of our viewers. That's www.openheartinstitute.com. And you know what, Haley, I just want to give this to you, and I want to say this. Thank you very much for sharing all of these stories here. And if there's one thing I can say is you are really awesome. And you are really a brave woman. And a lot of people should have these mindsets. And again, breaking free from the inner critic is just not a book that people want to read to break out from it, but it is more on giving that guidance. Again, it's the guidance that people might not be seeing it right now, but it's something that they can get in the future. And you know, Kalie, before we end this interview, is there anything else that you want to say to your viewers or to your future readers on what they can take away from your book?
Well, the first thing is the old version has got a male on the front of it. Don't buy that
Okay,
one.
don't buy that one.
It's got a female on it. Buy that. Okay. And a takeaway. The takeaway, all things do happen for good. But we have to be in a state of mind to recognize that.
Love that. Love that, Kalie. You know what, Kalie, I just want to give this to you. I just want to give you a slow clap. Really love that. Really loved it so much. Love the message and love the book. And again, to all of our viewers and people who are tuning in, again, feel free to grab a copy. The cover you're seeing right now on the video is the cover that you should be looking for. It's the revised, updated version, okay? Not the one with the guy, but the one with this beautiful woman on the cover as well, okay? So again, and one more thing to all of our viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. And always remember that every ending is just a new beginning in the world of stories. May your reading adventures be endless and your imagination boundless. And as we say here at Reader's Magnet, we share your stories with the world. Thank you and have a good one. Thank you, Kalie. Have a good one as well. Bye-bye.